Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. We have so many stories in the news today that we're going to get into. First, obviously, Michelle Trachtenberg's sudden death. And then we heard that Jean Hackman, his wife, and his dog died yesterday. So we have to talk about that. And a man who ate his brother's eyeball and killed him. A woman who likes to pee on groceries and more. So let's get started with celebrity news.
All right, so first we have actress Michelle Trachtenberg. She was most famously on Gossip Girl, Buffy. She was on Weeds. I don't know if you got that far in Weeds when she was on, but it was when the younger boy, what was his name? Jonah? The youngest son, when he was a little older. But she was found dead in her apartment yesterday. She was only 39 years old. Her mom last saw her the night before, and in the morning she was found unresponsive in bed. Right now, people are thinking it has to do with a liver transplant that she had last year and maybe it being rejected.
So this is a lot. We have a lot to talk about on this case because we don't really know that much and it could be so many different things. So of course, everybody is shocked about this because apparently only her closest friends really even knew that she had this liver transplant. And we don't exactly know why she had a liver transplant because that's the first thing you're going to think of is why would she have a liver transplant? And so we're going to go through today, we're going to go through all the different reasons why people might need a liver transplant and go over some of the things that you're hearing in the news. But again, some of the news sources that I've been seeing these stories from are not accurate, so I wouldn't even take them as word. And we're going to see like what happens when you have a liver transplant that fails and you die from it. So I guess the most important thing to start talking about is that her neighbors were interviewed and said that she was looking very frail in the past couple of months. Her hair looked very thin and her eyes looked yellow. And that's something called scleral icterus. And that is, you've heard of jaundice, right?
Yeah.
It's jaundice, but it's in the eyes. And that's usually the first place where jaundice will show up is in the eyes. So to me, that indicates that she was having liver failure again for whatever reason. Now, we don't know when she had the transplant. All of the articles are saying it was sometime this year, which is a long time. So she wasn't looking well. It wasn't really a shock to anybody that really knew her. One of her friends was interviewed and said that she was recently in the hospital and came home and said she was going to die. I don't know if that's true because there's a lot of sources that said this and sources said that. But I think it's fair to say she posted photos on Instagram. People were questioning why she didn't look healthy. She was very thin. So it's safe to say that she wasn't doing well right before she died. So now we're going to talk about reasons why a 39-year-old person would need a liver transplant. And the most common reason that people would need a transplant is because of cirrhosis. And when everybody thinks of cirrhosis, they automatically think of a person being an alcoholic. But that cirrhosis is not always caused by someone being an alcoholic. So we'll get into alcohol versus not. But first, let's just talk about natural diseases. And this is things that she either could have been born with or infections that she could have got that would have damaged her liver so bad that she would have needed a transplant. So first we think of infections like hepatitis C, hepatitis B, and then we think of maybe genetic conditions or other conditions that people have throughout their life, like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So that is most commonly seen in obese patients, which clearly she's not, but there's also a genetic component to that too. So that cannot be completely ruled out. And what happens is fatty liver disease is kind of early, it's early liver damage, but it can be reversible. But what happens is that the more damage that occurs, it could start turning into cirrhosis and permanently scar the liver. When we say cirrhosis, cirrhosis just means that the liver is scarred and there's no way of fixing it. There's no going back. Other genetic conditions that I've seen. So I should mention this, that for a long time when I worked in surgical pathology, I was the one that dissected all of the liver explants, which are the diseased livers coming out of these patients that are getting liver transplants. So I saw a lot of different stuff, and I'm very thankful for that experience. You could have some underlying genetic conditions called hemochromatosis, which is an excess iron that's deposited into your organs, Wilson's disease, which would be copper. These are all things I've seen transplants for. So this is a possibility because she never really talked about any of this, so nobody knows. There's other conditions now and this is another possibility. She could have been born with a condition and had a liver transplant already as a child that we didn't know about. And then this is now another liver transplant. So we just don't know any of this. She could have had cystic fibrosis, any of these things. Now, non-natural ways to have liver damage that would require a transplant, other things that I've seen in my career, obviously alcohol being the biggest one. So if you're an alcoholic, you could damage your liver to the point where you require a transplant. And I've definitely seen that in people as young as 39 years old. So that's a possibility. Another crazy explant that I had once was a woman who overdosed on Tylenol. And you think that's crazy, right? Yeah. Because people take it all the time, but you could overdose on it and totally destroy your liver. So she overdosed on Tylenol. She was actually trying to kill herself, so she probably had a decent amount. And she needed to get a liver transplant. So imagine surviving that and then having to go through the transplant and everything. But hopefully she had a new lease on life after that. I've seen other crazy things that cause liver failure, herpes virus. Well, we talked about that with infections, but non-natural things. So I think like rare things like a Tylenol overdose and stuff are a little bit less likely in this category. So that would be a reason that multiple reasons why she would need to get a liver transplant. Now,
well, I've seen most of the articles bringing up the alcohol factor because I feel like that's the most obvious correlation for lay people, right? But I've also seen that her family said she was pretty outspoken about being against substance abuse. So she wasn't really known as a big drinker or anybody that used drugs publicly anyway.
Yeah, and that I'm not saying that at all. A lot, but I feel like we should talk about it because why not? This is something that affects people in this age group. So, normally you would think, okay, well, if a person's an alcoholic and they damage their liver, why do they deserve to get a transplant, right? That's a lot of people say that. And I would argue that alcoholism is a disease and the cirrhosis is a secondary effect of that disease. So they should be treated as well as a person that is born with hemochromatosis or something, in my opinion. And most of medicine has that opinion.
Well, just because you did it to yourself doesn't mean you don't
deserve
to get some redemption in that.
Yeah, and it's and I mean there's just so much now that says that the addiction isn't something that you're quite control, or at least all people aren't in control of. So so it's completely possible that was the case, but we said, we just don't know. So when her mom left her the night before and then went over the next morning and she was dead, her mom was well aware that she was very sick. Now, when you get a liver transplant, especially when you're a young person, it's kind of worse when you're younger because young people have very good immune systems. And when you get a transplant, and this is like we talked about this the other day when we were talking about that guy that accidentally inhaled a pen cap. Mm-hmm. Whenever there's a foreign object put into your body, it's not plastic in this case, but it's not from your body. So your body recognizes it as foreign. Your body attacks it. So you put this liver, if you do a liver transplant, it's usually from a cadaver, or it's from a person that died. So someone dies in a car accident and they say, hey, do you want to donate the organs? And that liver will then go to the new person. And that liver is usually very healthy and they put it in, but then your body is like, this is foreign, I don't want this in, and your body starts attacking it. So what happens is when you get a transplant, they put you on all of these medications to chill your immune system out so your immune system doesn't attack this liver. And the negative part of that is when you chill your immune system down or suppress it, you then become immunosuppressed, and then you're opening yourself up to getting all these weird kind of infections and stuff like that. I don't know if I think that's the case, because people have said that she's been looking sick for a while. Apparently she went out to dinner too last week, and people were saying she could barely walk down the steps. So something more chronic is going on, in my opinion. Now, so the next thing that you need to think about is when you get a transplant, it's like any other surgery. You have risk of infection. You have risk of the anastomotic sites, or where they sew it back into the person, like leaking or anything like that. And I think it seems like she got through that stage of it. But the biggest thing that you need to worry about within the next couple of months of the transplant is the rejection. So so you could have acute rejection where it rejects pretty quickly, and then you could have chronic rejection. Usually you're not just sitting there totally fine, healed from this surgery, and then you just drop dead. So I think that if we can make any guess, it's she's having some kind of rejection that they knew about. I think that it's unusual that she's not in the hospital being treated if they knew that she was rejecting, but I'm not really sure what to say about that, honestly. I mean, she was there last week and told her friend that she was going to die. So I don't know if they were like, we don't know the full story. Did they say go home and just live your life out in your bed? I don't know what happened, but it is a little unusual that the medical examiner said that they're doing an autopsy, so it doesn't 100% seem like it was expected, at least that quickly.
Well, could they be doing it for research purposes if maybe she did have something
not at
rare?
not at the New York City Medical Examiner's office, if that's where they're doing the autopsy. And I just don't think a person of her level and stuff would be being brought to a hospital to do any kind of research. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that that's not possible. So I don't know if it was a complete shock to her mother to find her that way, because maybe it didn't seem as imminent as it was.
Well, even if you're prepared,
Well,
it's still going to be a shock.
Yeah, I understand that. So, but in normal cases, let's say a person has cancer and they're getting palliative care, like they're getting medication just to be comfortable, and they die. The medical examiner doesn't usually get involved with that because it was known. And like I said, we can't 100% say, because she had the surgery. She could have had it 2 days ago or a year ago. We don't really know. Not 2 days ago, obviously. She'd still be in the hospital, but we don't really know with that. So
most of the articles I said she had the transplant last year. So it definitely wasn't in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so she more than likely was having some kind of chronic rejection at this point, I would say. Because even if she did get a weird infection, I feel like she would be in the hospital being treated for that. Now, there are people that get liver transplants and they reject in some cases, and then they get another transplant. So that's why I was saying it is possible that she had one when she was younger, and then this is now another one that's rejecting again. And the reason that I say this is because, do you remember my friend Ken?
Yeah.
So I had a friend, Ken, that worked at the medical examiner's office when I was in PA school, and we were really good friends. We hung out all the time. And he was a pretty healthy guy. And then when he was young, like in his 20s, he was playing hockey. He hit his head and he was unresponsive. And he got medevaced to the local trauma center. And they said, okay, your head's fine, but your heart is complete shit. Like, you need a heart. You have to get a heart transplant. Like, how crazy is that to hear that? So again, he's in his 20s. He's super young. They don't even really know what caused it. They think it was a viral infection. So he gets on the heart transplant list. He gets a heart, and he has it for a while, 10, 15 years. He's fine with this new heart. And then all of a sudden, the heart started rejecting. And it was like, oh shit, he has to go back on the list and get a new heart. It just was like that quick. And he got the new heart, and it just was like never good. It never really took. He was out of the hospital, but he just never looked well, and he died shortly after getting that second heart transplant. And he was 40-ish. So I kind of went through this with one of my friends before. And it's just getting a transplant is a really big deal to me, and it's so awesome that they do it, but it's a life or death situation. It's a very serious surgery.
Is there like a magic number of years where you could have an organ transplant? And I guess what I'm asking is, when you get a transplant, is there like a certain amount of time where you're considered in a safe zone, or are you always at risk for it rejecting at some point?
You're always at risk. There's people like liver transplants are pretty good. They're not the most, like a lung transplant would probably be a much higher reason of rejection and have more complications with something like that. There's people that get one liver transplant and they live a healthy life after that, and because that's really all that needs to be replaced on them to make them better. It's considered curative in most cases, in a lot of cases. So, it's a shame. It's a shame that we don't know anything about it because I was really reading some really nasty shit online about her, and I don't like that. People, she'll post a picture of herself, and everybody's like, "Are you on drugs? You look so bad." Blah. And I guess a part of it is you're famous and you're out there. She has almost 1 million followers on Instagram. So you have everybody commenting. People are genuinely concerned, but other people are just assholes. And for whatever reason, though, it's her decision. She just decided that she didn't want to tell the world what was going on with her. And I think it's kind of cool that she went through all that and had a freaking transplant, and it never came out that she was going through any of that until now.
Yeah, I mean, it means she has good, trustworthy people in her life that weren't leaking her story to the press.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the rarest part of all of this.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's really sad. I don't know how much we'll find out. I don't think it's going to be, I don't know if we're going to hear anything that's really shocking unless she decided to do something because she was in too much pain and just didn't want to live anymore. I'm not sure about that, but, hopefully they give us some info once the autopsy's done.
All right. Well, another shocking death yesterday was Jean Hackman. So he's an Oscar award-winning actor. He was in The French Connection, Superman, Young Frankenstein, a bunch of good movies.
I love him, actually. I love all those movies too.
When I saw this, not to be insensitive, but I was like, I would have bet money he died 40 years ago.
You're like, no, I swear we talked about him for some reason.
Well, he's 95. I don't think he's acted since the early 2000s. Like, his name isn't really coming up.
I feel like we talked about it for whatever reason, because I was saying, remember I was saying like, oh God, I thought he was 60 and I heard he was like 98 and it was shocking to me. Or 95 or however old he was.
Well, when I first saw it, I was like, I don't know. I get the names confused, and then he was in Young Frankenstein too, so I'm like, Gene Wilder's been dead, right? Like, that's what I'm thinking. But it's a totally different guy. All these old men named Gene. It's hard to keep track of. There's just a lot of them.
No, he's Lex Luthor. Come on.
All right, so Gene Wilder, his wife, and one of their 3
Jean
dogs.
Hackman.
Sorry. Oh my God. I knew I was going to do this. Gene Hackman, his wife, and one of their 3 dogs were all found dead in their home in New Mexico yesterday afternoon. Yesterday, the news was saying they didn't suspect any foul play, but TMZ this morning was reporting that police got a search warrant in case they had to look further into the house to see if there was any criminal activity. And also 2 of the dogs survived, so I guess they're looking into that.
Yeah, so of course, when I just saw the headline, obviously my first thought is, okay, carbon monoxide, right? But apparently they just came out as of, what time is it now? 2 o'clock in the afternoon, while we're recording right now. They just came out and said that the fire department said that there was no evidence that there was carbon monoxide in the house, no pipes leaking, gas leaking, nothing. So we're ruling that out. So now it's like, okay, let's think of the possible scenarios. We have 2 dead people and a dead dog.
With no visible trauma.
They said the front door was ajar, but it didn't look like there was any forcible entry. So that's number 1. Then there was a cop that got interviewed and said it didn't seem like there was visible trauma, but they could have been victims of homicide, suicide, accident, death, or natural death. I feel like he was just being a dick. Yeah, exactly. It was probably like some just guy being a dick to a reporter or something. So now they're obviously, like, I don't think that it's weird that they got a warrant, because if you show up to do a wellness check and see that someone's front door is open and then find them dead in the house, I would just do that to cover my ass. And it's freaking Jean Hackman. It's not.
I don't think it's weird they got it. I just thought it was weird that yesterday it seemed pretty straightforward, like no foul play suspected, and now they're saying there might be.
So these are some things. These are some of my theories anyway. Okay, so Jean Hackman could totally die. He's 95 years old, or he was 95, right?
Yeah.
So he could just drop dead. He's old. She's not old.
63.
She's 63. So now you have to be like, okay, something happened, because why is she dead too? So these are the possible scenarios. They're in the house. Okay, one other thing that we have to say that's very important is that the investigators are saying it looks like they were dead for some time. Okay?
Well,
so
what's some time? Is it like a day or two or a week?
I don't know. I'm assuming that they were decomposed. That's what I get out of it.
Because I read it was only like a day or two. 24 to 48 hours.
No, they're saying sometime. So it's
Okay.
clear they've been dead for a while. They're not fresh dead, whatever. Okay? So here's my possible scenarios. Number one, he died in the house and like she couldn't deal with it and killed herself, right? They found her on the floor, apparently in front of a space heater with like pills all over the floor. So that's one option. That's a possibility. Number two, they were also saying it's possible that she fell or something, right? So she's in the bathroom and she falls. Now, let's pretend she hits her head really bad, or let's pretend she falls and dies. She hits her head so bad. Well, let's say he's in the other room, but he's 95 years old and he needs her assistance to get around or do anything. He can't walk, he can't eat, he can't do anything without her help. We don't know what kind of condition he's in, right? So if his main caregiver is now incapacitated, now he is also at risk for dying because he has no one to physically feed him and take care of him. So that's another scenario. We could think about something crazy like their food they ate was poisoned or something. I don't think that that's really probable. Obviously, people could have came in and killed them, although there was no signs that they were killed, unless somebody did something shady like poisoning them or something like that. So I just think it's more likely. And now when you hear that the dog was dead but the other dogs weren't dead, what I did read in one of the articles was that there was a closet next to the bathroom that this woman was in, that the wife was in, and the dog was in the closet. So if there had been a couple days that went by and there were people that were incapacitated or dead, then nobody could have opened the closet or wherever this dog was staying, and the dog could have just died because it didn't have anything to eat or drink for a couple days.
Okay, so I totally could see what you're saying about, like, you know, one of them dying of natural causes, vice versa, right? But I also think there is a possibility, let's say they got some horrible food poisoning or something, and like they ate the same meal, and then dogs often eat human food.
I said it because it's a possibility. I just think that that's outrageous. I just think it has to, listen, when I read this story, this is going to be my honest first thought. When I read this story, I was like, this is what every child dreads when their old parents live together far away from them, because they need each other to survive. There's no one else around to check in on them all the time. And now you got a situation where if he was the only adult in the house and she, for whatever reason, was stuck on the floor, even if it was for something silly, he can't help her, or vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's what the vibe I get off of it. It sounds crazy, but as soon as I heard that the dog was locked up, I was like, well, duh. And even if the dog wasn't locked up, the dog would have ate one of them, right? And maybe that's what the other two did. We have no idea what happened. We don't know about what their bodies looked like. Were they decomposed? Were they this? Were they that? So we don't really know. And the good thing is that they're going to get autopsies done. And let's say, for example, they do the autopsy on the wife that was found in the bathroom. They're clearly going to be able to tell if she fell and hit her head, or however she died. If she did decide to take drugs or whatever she decided to do, or whatever happened, they'll be able to tell from the autopsy.
I would say your second option is most plausible. Like, she got hurt first, and then he couldn't get up and do anything.
Yeah,
because if he died, and even if she emotionally couldn't take it, why wouldn't she say anything?
What do you mean?
Like, why wouldn't she call the police or anything?
Well, I
or
don't know what
911.
people do. I don't really think that's. I don't think we're gonna hear anything else more crazy out of this. It just sounds very weird right now. But if you talk to EMS people and stuff, it's like stuff like that happens when you can't have like a really old senior citizen looking over another senior citizen. It's just like, and this happened to Laura. Her mom lived alone, and her mom fell one day, right? And Laura checked on her mom every day, so it was fine. But she was like, I fell last night. I've been laying on the floor for 6 hours or something. And Laura's like, what the fuck? You don't have your phone in your pocket and you can't move.
That's why they made those buttons for people.
Yeah, life alert. But yeah, so it's just like a fear, like obviously we don't have that because my parents live on my brother's campus and my sister lives next door too. But I mean, if Mom and Pop lived up there by themselves, we would have to be taking rotating turns every 2 days to go check on them.
Yeah, of course.
Or just like get them the life alert thing and stuff, because that just happens to old people. So, it sucks because, like he's 95. Who you don't want to be doing an autopsy on a 95-year-old person because they were found in this way, but it's safe to do for him because he's so high profile.
Yeah. All right, the Grande Dame of Potomac, Karen Huger, 61 years old. She has been sentenced to 1 year of prison after getting a DUI last year. I didn't know this, but this was her 4th alcohol-related driving offense. So this prison sentence makes sense to me, and now that I think about that, it's a little light, considering.
4 times?
Yes.
So the judge said something interesting. We can't. How are we supposed to believe in the last 17 years you've only gotten pulled over you've only drank and drive for 4 times, right?
And you got caught the only time she did it,
the only
basically.
times. Yeah, she's trying to say the only time she got caught. And the craziest statistic ever, if you look up statistics of drunk driving, is that they believe that the average drunk driver will be under the influence driving 80 times before they even get arrested with their first DUI. I mean, that's outrageous. So yeah, so just based on statistics, she's drinking and driving like all the time.
I don't know if you saw her BAC. I was trying to look it up, but I didn't find it successfully. But I watched the body cam footage a couple months ago when that came out, and she was piss-ass drunk. I mean, she immediately was like, don't you know who I am? She name-dropped Andy Cohen.
I hate hearing that shit. And it's just like, well, really, who are you? You're a fucking housewife. Get over yourself.
Well,
really?
You know this happened with Reese Witherspoon, right?
Yeah, and it happened with Justin Timberlake, too.
Yeah, so it was like...
But at least they're like somebody's. Like, who knows who a housewife is besides you? Like,
well, yeah, exactly.
They're not really like A-list celebrities or anything.
So she said, don't you know who I am? She tried to name drop Andy Cohen. Then she started referring to herself as, quote, Thomas Jefferson's concubine. Everybody's like, what are you talking about, you crazy lady? Yeah, they said...
Wait, didn't she insult the cop, too?
Yeah, she was saying... I don't know the exact quote, but she was saying something along the lines of, like, don't you know I don't like you or something.
No, she said something like you're like a poor white boy or something.
Oh, I don't know.
Which I'm just like, how douchey can you be? Like, she sounds like such a douchebag. Don't you know who I am? Oh, poor little white boy. Like, listen, like, do you want to piss off a cop right now? Like, he's pulling over some rich lady that has
they were being really nice to her.
I know, and she has 4 DUIs, right? And he's pulling her over probably in some Lamborghini or some shit. And then you're telling him that he's poor? Like, that's not good. That would purposely make me be like, you know what? I'm going to get her in as much trouble as I possibly can under the law.
Yeah,
they're way too nice. Like, that shit would piss me off, man.
So basically, I guess the controversy in the Bravo world is nobody could understand why right when it happened, she didn't go to rehab and try to make some plea deal but she didn't. She like fought to have this trial, and of course she lost the trial.
Well, because she's a narcissist. I mean, you could tell just by the way she talks to people, but she thinks that that the rules don't apply to her and she's above the law. And I love how this turned out, actually.
Yeah, so she was sentenced to a 2-year prison term. One of the years is suspended. She has 30 days to appeal it. I mean, this is not getting appealed. I'm sorry. She crashed into a bunch of traffic signs and I believe a median, which is why she got pulled over. It's not like she was even swerving. She got in an accident. And it could have been really bad. She could have killed somebody. And considering, when we were talking about this in the car yesterday, I first said, wow, I can't believe they sentenced her, because we talk about so many DUI cases where people don't get in trouble at all. And I was surprised at that. And then when I learned that this was her 4th offense, I do think it's a little light of a sentence.
Yeah, and she really, I mean, like we were talking about earlier with alcoholism being a medical condition and stuff, like I have a distaste for people who drink and drive. It just because I just think it's just incredibly selfish and preventable. But like at the same time, if you're drinking and driving that much, you have, I mean, she's an alcoholic and she needs help.
Well, she said she's not an
No,
alcoholic.
she is. I don't care what she says. She is. Like,
so yeah. And
you don't, do you want me to believe that she's had 4 glasses of wine at dinner? And come on, this is just, this is a clear sign of it. And I just wish, like, you're going to put this chick in jail, but all you're going to do when she gets out of jail is increase her anxiety, and then she's going to want to drink more.
I doubt she's going to go to, like, a hard jail. She'll go to one of those
she's
fancy
not going to go
prisons
to pound me in the ass prison. What do they say on Office Space?
Oh, I don't know.
You know that movie?
I know the movie,
Federal
but I don't.
Pound Me in the Ass Prison or whatever.
She's going to go to probably one of those nice prisons that all her other housewife jailbirds have gone to, which they refer to as camp because it's like nice and they can do whatever they want.
Didn't Teresa Giudice go to jail?
Yeah, and Jennifer Shaw. So she is now the 3rd housewife in my lifetime that is sent to prison. So, I mean, it's only the tip of the iceberg. There's literally an entire podcast devoted to Bravo lawsuits. There are so many. I don't know. I was surprised by the sentence at first, but as I said, now that I've discovered it's her 4th offense, I think she could have maybe got a little more time. I don't know why we're letting drunk drivers off so light, especially when they're in the multiple offense territory. This episode is brought to you by the Gross Room.
Guys, last night we told you that we were having this dinner with a Gross Room member to celebrate our 5-year anniversary, and we went last night. It was so fun. Emma was so cute, and we talked about the Phillies, and we had good food, right? But Maria, tell them about our waiter, how fucking annoying he was.
Again, I'm gonna say, like, the server and the manager came over to the table way too many times, but
it was like 15 times. It had to be more than 15 times.
I'm not even putting the full blame on the server because I had worked for that parent company before and they make them do that. And I think it's almost worthy of writing a letter because, we're sitting there having like this awesome conversation, learning everything about Emma's life. She's this amazing welder, this mother, her father worked for the ME. We're having like these awesome conversations and we're interrupted 100 times. And I was like, dude, you just want to sit on my lap and feed me?
It was so outrageous, but that was really cool. So hopefully we'll be doing more dinners like that with some of our members. But this week, Maria's article is coming out about a human egg farm, which is very crazy, actually outrageous and crazy. And I have a really cool video that I'm going to be posting later that's also outrageous. So check it out.
Yeah, head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up.
Okay, let's get into true crimes because we have some doozies this week.
All right, let's talk about the Preppy Princeton murder. So there was these 2 brothers, Matt and Joe. They were raised in this wealthy family in New Jersey and were living in a luxury apartment in Princeton. I don't know if you know this, but we actually drove by this apartment building when we were in Princeton yesterday.
We were in Princeton yesterday. It's oddly enough the first time I've ever been on Princeton's campus, and I loved it. I thought it was beautiful. And then I'm like, oh, wow, now I could kind of we could put ourselves there because we were there. We were there yesterday for another reason, which Obviously, like, we could have checked this out if we knew.
Yeah, we didn't even know about this case when we were there, so now I'm, like, really mad that we are all the way there. But I remember I looked up this apartment building on the map, and then I specifically remember driving by it because across the street or near it was some coffee shop I specifically pointed out to you and said, like, we could go there and get a
Oh,
drink.
God.
So, anyway, this is all going down in Princeton. So, Saturday night, police respond to this 911 call that there's a dead body and a fire at this luxury apartment building. So, they get to the apartment and they find the younger brother, Joe. He's dead. He has signs of blunt force trauma and lacerations. And it turns out that the older brother, Matt, had beat him with a golf club and a knife before setting the family's cat on fire and then allegedly cutting out the younger brother's eyeball and eating it.
Yeah, so when did the eyeball get cut out? Because was it before he died or after he died?
I don't really know.
See, they'll be able to tell this at autopsy because the way that the article was written, it was like ripped out his little brother's eyeball before beating and slashing him to death. So I'm like, did he rip out the eye and then beat him up? Like, I'm curious about that. Like, listen, this guy had posted on Facebook a couple months ago something about sharpening a knife and blood oozing out of his eyes and stuff. Like, he's clearly having some kind of psychosis and some kind of mental health issues that weren't being addressed or treated. I don't know why he wasn't getting treated for this, but the Facebook posts alone were very alarming. So I'm not sure why he was just walking around, but he was probably hearing voices and stuff. And you see cases of this from time to time where people who kill people do really outrageous things, and including cannibalism. And like, it's like not like the guy. I don't think they're gonna find that the guy's evil. He's probably schizophrenic.
I mean, when
How
they
old
got,
is he?
he's 31.
Yeah,
so
he's
like my
in that age range.
So they get to the scene and they find this kid dead, and then there's a plate and a fork next to his body, and his eyeball's missing. So I don't know.
It's missing. Like, they couldn't find it on the scene. They really believe he ate it.
No, they really believe he ate it. And beyond the Facebook post, it doesn't seem like there was much. I don't know. Like, there weren't many signs that he was going through something, at least publicly to family, friends, and everything, and acquaintances.
The poem on Facebook, though, is weird.
No, it's disturbing. But, you know, when you think of somebody that would do something like this, it's like, okay, they're walking around, they're talking to themselves, they're like constantly getting in situations. According to everybody, these brothers were soccer stars. The whole family was athletic and really nice and super sweet. And it just has become a total shock to everybody that knows them.
And that's another thing that makes you think that he was really having some kind of psychotic episode, because they interviewed one of his coaches and he was like, literally nothing was ever off. He was totally normal. And that makes you think, okay, clearly he was going through something.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but they have another brother. I mean, imagine being that other brother. It's just like one of your brothers is dead and the other. I mean, it's a tragedy for the family, really.
I don't know. I was trying to figure out, I don't know if you saw this, like, were him and the younger brother living at home with the parents? Because that's what it seemed like, that they were living in their family home in this luxury apartment in
So
Princeton.
that's like the mom and dad's house where they, I don't know.
That's what I was picking up from the article. So, I mean, not that people don't do it, but I would consider it unusual for a 30-year-old grown man to be living at home with their parents. So, I'm just saying, like, I know people definitely do that, but that's another sign maybe that maybe he was going through something and they were like caregivers for him.
Maybe.
So, I don't know. This is really sad. He's been charged with first-degree murder, weapon offenses, and animal cruelty, and he's facing up to 30 years to life in prison for this.
That's another thing, too. Like who sets a cat on fire? You know, it's just like the things that he's doing are just so abnormal that you have to think something's going on.
Okay, in New Hampshire, a 23-year-old content creator has been arrested after she went into a grocery store, peed on a bunch of products, and videoed herself doing it.
I wonder why she did this. It's really, so this is in New Hampshire, right?
Yeah.
God. And they list the grocery store, which I feel terrible because it sounds like it's a little, like an organic grocery store, a little family-owned place probably. And Here they're having to put out a statement that they looked at the video and saw all the products that this woman peed on and threw out the products and had to clean up the area, and then listed the products on the website like, hey, it's not anything fresh. It was all this packaged stuff. So just make sure you check if you have any of this and bring it back to the store and we'll give you a refund. I mean, like, what the fuck is wrong with people?
Yeah, so they're reporting $1,500 in loss, which that's a really big hit to a small store like that if they're family owned. And the products that she contaminated was quinoa, cornmeal, shredded coconut, polenta, raw walnuts. Thank God she didn't pee on any fresh produce or anything. I mean, at least those things are in packages. Not that it makes it better necessarily, but it would probably be harder to contaminate the food directly. She's contaminating the packages, but this just seems like a completely mentally ill person that's not thinking in their right mind.
Well, she was also recording it, and I don't know where, because they're saying she's some kind of influencer. Like, was she doing it for some weird, like, OnlyFans people urinating on people page or something? Like, was she doing it for that reason?
You know what? I didn't even think about that, and that makes sense because typically when we cover stories like this, they'll be like, these people were doing it for TikTok or Instagram, and they did not say a platform it was being posted on. And when they did the investigation, her videos were going back to 2021.
Yeah.
So she's been doing this for at least 4 years.
She's doing it, and, like, people are jerking off to it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
that
serious.
would make
It's
sense.
fucking weird.
Yeah, especially because the terminology was content creator, not influencer, which they typically use with people
Yeah, and
online.
they'll typically say the platform too. So they're probably investigating still to see, like, who else is involved in this piss ring, you know?
Okay, well, this totally makes sense then. She was doing this for like some weird sexual pleasure and
Possibly.
making money
I mean,
off.
that's just my...
Our opinion is that that was happening. I would say that would, yeah, based on the terminology and the way the article was written on all the different news sites, I would say that was probably the most accurate. Okay, this story is really horrible. So last week in West Palm Beach, police got a call from a local hospital that a nurse had been critically injured. So while she was working, this patient suddenly jumped on his bed and then jumped on her, started attacking her. And luckily, a witness was nearby to get her help quickly, but he really did some damage to her face.
Yeah, this is so scary. I mean, we just had a story not even a week ago about a patient who was holding medical staff hostage and shot and injured them, zip tying them, killed a police officer at a hospital, and now we're hearing this. And this story, and it's kind of makes you think about how are nurses and medical staff, anybody working in the hospital, being protected where they work. It's interesting because I was at a hospital this morning, and when I walked in, I just was kind of looking around at the front desk, and I'm like, anybody could fucking walk right by here and go up on the floors and have access to people. It's just like they're not really checking, especially when it's really busy and there's people in and out, and it's a little bit of a vulnerability for sure. In this case, this woman was beaten so bad that the trauma physicians are saying that every single bone in her face was broken. She might lose her eyes because of it. That's how bad she got beaten. And the scariest part is after this patient beat the shit out of this nurse, he left the hospital and was arrested, like, running down the street outside.
Well, I think this story in particular is really scary because unlike the other case, in the other case, a guy just kind of walked in there and went into the ICU and took those people hostage and shot all those people. But in this case, this was a patient in the bed and they didn't use a weapon. They were using their body. So how are you supposed to prevent this?
Well, so this is digging deeper into this. Her family's super pissed off because apparently...
Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, anybody would be pissed off, but when you hear this, you'll get more pissed off. So apparently this patient is a psychiatric patient who is being held on something called a Baker Act hold, which is an involuntary admission into a mental health hospital or program. So you go into the hospital and you're having some kind of psychotic episode, perhaps like you want to kill your brother and eat his eyeballs or something, right? You go to the hospital, and if you say you want to leave, they're like, you're not leaving. You're too bad, you can't leave, okay? Well, they put him in this hospital that this nurse that got beat up was working in, and apparently that hospital isn't approved to take patients like that. They don't have the training and they don't have the security to deal with those patients. So he shouldn't have been there anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And now they're saying that this guy was having delusions in the days leading up to the attack and everything. So this was like, they did not do what they should have did to protect her as far as the information that's being released right now. And I mean, like, what's the difference? Hopefully they could do something with hospital security, which just needs to be done anyway. It's long overdue. This is certainly not the first time this has happened this week. And it's like you can't 100% prevent all of it, but like this is just a known at this point.
It's just really scary. I mean,
I
just
feel
feel
like
you
you get
can.
that call about your mother or something. It's fucking terrible.
I just think anymore, just being out in public is scary. I mean, we were having a situation local to us where this man like locked himself in a coffee shop nearby with the only girl working in there. And then thankfully another customer came up and saw him and, interrupted this interaction. But then later that day, he goes to another local business and stabs a random person. It's just so scary.
It is. And you just hear, I mean, you hear the most of it in New York, I feel, that, a random person punching someone in the face or pushing them on the train platform or things like that. It just, didn't like a little, like, teenage girl get stabbed in Grand Central Station a couple months ago or a year ago or whatever. Like, it's really scary because sometimes you see people walking on the street and they're talking to themselves and stuff and you're like, I'm going to go on the other side of the street, right? But sometimes,
well, no, because you are the asshole if you want to put yourself in safety if somebody seems like they're not acting in the right mind, because we shouldn't be judging other people like that when I think
care.
Sometimes somebody's acting so fucking crazy that it's okay to cross the street.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay. Other death news. This is a good one.
All right, so this couple from Australia was headed for an Italian vacation, and while they were mid-flight, a woman that was on the plane collapsed and died, and then they had to sit next to her for the remainder of the flight.
So, I understand that this is not ideal, but you're on an airplane. They were going from Melbourne, Australia to Venice, okay? So, you're on an airplane. You could possibly be over the ocean, or you're just on a really long flight. What does everybody want the crew on the airplane to do with a dead person?
No, I think the problem in this case was so this dead woman is sitting in the aisle seat and then this married couple is in the middle seat in the window seat. And I think the problem people have with this story is that there were open seats elsewhere on the aircraft and the staff would not let them move. Why would they not be allowed to relocate?
I don't know.
Because I don't know, because I
don't work on a plane. I also just think like it's just not that big of a deal. Like, well, I don't know.
According to TMZ and according to the International Air Transport Association, a deceased person should be placed in a seat, quote, with few other passengers nearby and covered with a bag or a blanket. So when this woman died, they did cover her body with a blanket, but because of the motion of the plane, the blanket kept slipping off, exposing her face to the man next to her. And then they had asked to be moved in different seats, and allegedly the flight attendant said they could not, even though there was other open seats elsewhere on the aircraft. So I think that is the issue most people are having with this, that there was room. It wasn't like it was a completely packed flight. There was room and they would not allow them.
It's weird. It's just like, I just don't, like the guy's like, we were traumatized over and over again. Like, come on. Like,
well, I think he was traumatized over and over again when her face kept sliding out of the sheet. Like, it's all I picture. It's really
is like,
horrible.
You know, in Goonies when like Chunk goes in the fridge and he turns the guy around and he's like all dead standing there. It's a stiff. That's you're sitting there and this person's going through everything, rigor mortis, everything, while they're sitting next to you on the plane, all stiff, like the sheet coming over and just looking at you with their dead eyes. I don't know. It's just like
listen, if this happened to me,
that big of a deal. Like, it would be something to talk about, but it's not like ruining your vacation. Come on.
But if this happened to me and there was other seats open that I could see, fuck the flight attendants. Just get up and go to them.
Yeah, I mean, that I literally was thinking that. I was just like, why did they listen? Like, I would have been like, no, I'm going to go up, get up to pee, and then I'm sitting over there. And if you have a problem with it, then, oh well. I mean, you don't really want to start a fight with a flight attendant, because then all of a sudden it's going to be like an issue with you. And I think every person in the world would understand, like, hey, there's like a dead person next to me. I just wanted to move over there with a live person. But there might be reasons, because I was trying to tell the kids this too. When you go on the airplane, they like you to sit in the seat that you're assigned to, because your name is associated with that seat, I guess, in case there's an issue. They don't like people not sitting where they're supposed to be sitting. You know, like, you're supposed to be in seat 28.
This is an emergency. I'm sorry. This is my proposal.
Really not. It's just a dead person.
Don't they have access to the underneath where the luggage is?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, if they did, this was my proposal.
They should make like a
they should
laundry
put a little
chute.
slide. They should put a slide so they can put the person down there and then just have them down there until they get to the destination.
Yes.
It would solve a lot of problems.
It would solve all the problems.
But I guess then you have other issues.
They could put a trap door in, like, underneath of the carpet. Because really, if they go down the trap door and they hurt themselves, like, they're already dead, so it's not that big of a deal.
I mean, people are probably really not going to be for that idea, but it's like, do you want to sit next to a dead person for a multi-hour flight? Or would you rather them go down the little chute and be in privacy?
I would have been taking selfies with the dead lady.
Well, you're like a freak, so of course you would have been.
Listen, it's not like it's their grandma. They don't know who it is. Who cares?
All right, whatever. Let's move on to question of the day. Every Friday at the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, you guys can head to our story and ask us whatever questions you want. First, once my friend told me her father was so constipated that he pooped out of his mouth. Can this happen?
Oh my God. No, not really. I mean,
it's not really.
In theory, if you are so constipated, you could start regurgitating maybe some small bowel contents up there a little bit. Like, you're not having, it could be like early stages of poop. It's not going to be like a full turd coming out of your mouth. That's not happening.
That is so ridiculous.
It's like, I'm trying to think of any kind of scenario that would even be able to happen, and I just don't think so. Like, one time I opened someone's chest cavity and there was poop in their chest cavity, but then it was like they ended up having some crazy hernia that went up into their chest and perforated, and it wasn't even really, again, it wasn't like turd poop. It was like small bowel poop. So, and that's the chest. That wasn't even out the mouth. Like, I don't, her friend told her that this happened.
Yeah, she said, my friend told me her father was so constipated he pooped out of his mouth.
No.
All right, 2. Is there a reason to shave someone's head during an autopsy?
No. There's been a couple times that I've had to cut a little bit of people's hair if they really want a brain removal. So in normal cases, if you have hair, like if you're looking at Maria right now, hair that's just like very easy to brush and stuff, I would just get a comb. I kept a comb in the morgue, and I would make the part where I need to make the incision. So then when I make the incision along the part, it really only cuts a few pieces of hair going through. But there's been times where, one particular time, like I had a woman, a woman with dreadlocks and a woman with braids that were all tied up in a certain kind of way that I was like, there's not going to be a way for me to do this incision without cutting some of these pieces off. And in that circumstance, if it's a few pieces of hair that could just be covered with a part or something, I don't feel bad about that. But like now, if we're talking about cutting out like multiple braids or dreadlocks out of someone's hair, I would just, like, I called the funeral director and just said, hey, I have to take out the brain. Is this okay? Because it's the only way that I could get out the brain. So either decide that you don't want me to take out the brain or let me cut the hair. Like, I give them that option, just because I don't want to do it and then send the body over to the funeral home and have the family freak out. Right. And they would have a right to over that. So But to shave it, there's just no reason. Like, you use a scalpel blade that's very thin that could fit on any part of the hair. It's just, unless there's been time, like one time I had a patient that had very matted hair that hadn't been brushed in months. It was like that big ball of matte hair. And in that case, I would have had to cut it off. But that in that particular case, I wasn't taking out the brain. So I could see maybe in some extenuating circumstances.
What about in a case like Ellen Greenberg, for example, when she has a bunch of stab wounds on her head?
Well, I guess, yeah. And like, if you're talking about just brain removal, then yeah. For sure. Like, if you're trying to look at a wound, yeah, you would do that. Just if it was a case that wasn't clear cut. I'm pretty sure that they did in her case, that they would cut around the wounds and stuff like that. But I don't, in a regular autopsy, there would never be a reason to do that.
Like, why, now that we're thinking about this, like when Teddy Mellencamp just got those tumors removed, like why did they have to shave her whole head?
Well, you have a different situation now with surgery, because surgery is a sterile environment, and you want to have, like, hair could just grab bacteria, and you just don't want any kind of dirt or anything in the surgical field as much as possible. So that's why they do that in that situation. But like for autopsy, it's like, who cares? They're dead. They're not going to get a bacterial infection in their brain. Like, the last thing you want is to introduce bacteria into someone's brain.
Did you see she ended up getting 4 tumors removed from her
yes,
brain?
and the imaging is crazy. They're huge.
Oh, I haven't even seen the imaging yet.
The one is so big. I'm just like, I feel terrible to look at that. It's just it's just not good.
All right, last question is, Maria, how was it growing up telling your friends your mom did autopsies? Well, you started doing autopsies when I was a teenager, so I feel like in general it was pretty hard for people to get over the fact that I was in high school and had a parent in her 20s. So that was like first obstacle. I mean, people thought it was cool. I mean, people still think it's cool when they ask me what you do, and they think it's really interesting, especially because, like, you're a young, pretty lady that wants to do it, not just, like, you know, I feel like a lot of times.
Well, it was cool too, because we were talking to Emma last night at dinner. Like I said, she was our grocery winner for the dinner, and her dad was a toxicologist. So she was telling us crazy stories about when she was growing up, about the different cases he would work on and interesting things like that. So for us, it's like, and even before I started doing autopsy, I worked in pathology and cytology for several years before that too. So Maria's been, and then I went to school for that, and Maria was like in second grade, like when I was looking at slides under the microscope and stuff. So she's been in that world for a long time. It's just kind of like normal for us.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know if it's weird, right?
I just think with, you know, at the time you started doing it, you know, NCIS was huge, and there was that girl
God,
that kind
yes.
of looked like you. So everybody, I feel like, understood more because there was a pop culture reference to go hand in hand with it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't think people really would have gotten it. And again, that show was not really that accurate to what you were doing in real life.
No, not even a little bit.
It placed a young, beautiful woman with dark, long hair in a lab, and I think people started understanding more with that.
Yeah, remember that one someone wrote an article about me called The Real Abby from NCIS or something like that.
That was like really long time ago.
That was a really long time ago, I know. Yeah, I got into it a little bit before. I guess there's always been true crime stuff on TV. Like, there was like Quincy and stuff, but there wasn't a ton of shows on back then besides like that show, I guess, and those types of things. But
yeah, like that and CSI,
yeah,
right?
And those shows are absolutely terrible. They're the worst shows ever. Remember, Mom and Pop-Up used to watch them all the time, and I would come home from school or just go, you know, and I would just be like, what are you watching right now? And I'd watch it. I get so pissed off. I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's what happens. That's what the medical examiner looks like. And
well, they really think it does. And they think it's that easy that you could get DNA and toxicology results in, like, you know, 45 minutes, which is just like.
There was this show on one time. I think it was called Crossing Jordan or something like that. Or maybe it wasn't. I don't remember. But there was like a woman, she's a very beautiful woman, who was playing like the Philadelphia medical examiner. And so not only that, compared to the guy who was actually the chief at the time, which was like gross. But then number two, the morgue, they got a new one in Philadelphia now, but at the time when I was there, it was like 70s as shit with the wood paneling and everything.
Yeah.
And their morgue in this show was like all stainless steel and beautiful with like all of the latest saws and everything. And you're just like, okay, this is nothing what this looks like at all.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. If you have a shocking story, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com or shoot us a message on Instagram. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star written review on Apple.
Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.